Hello boys and girls and parents and uncles and aunties and anyone else who's watching this week's Sunday Club at Home video. I hope you've had a fantastic week. The weather has been much warmer and sunnier this week, so I hope you've been able to enjoy the sunshine, maybe in the park or riding your bike or just having great fun playing in the playground. So before I start explaining the Bible character we're going to look at this week, I want to tell you, is there anything where you have had to trust your parents when something has been really difficult or it's something that you've never done before? So have you ever had to trust your parents who have told you, oh, have a go at doing this, or why don't you try doing this? And you've been there going, oh, but mum, dad, uncle, auntie, grandmum, that seems really difficult. Well, listen on in this video and I've got 5 or so pictures of different scenarios where you would have to trust your parents. So do enjoy this. So maybe it's swimming in the sea for the first time, or just swimming in the sea in general, and you're like, oh, but it's cold today, or what if there's jellyfish, or the seaweed is going to feel weird on my body. So you have to trust your parents that they promise everything will be okay and they'll be there for you. And they'll be there swimming with you or watching you. Or maybe it's riding a bike with no stabilizers. And you're like, well, I was good with stabilizers. What if it's all wobbly? Or what if I fall off and hurt myself? Again, you've got to trust your parents and when they promise that everything will be okay and that they'll be there to help you. Or maybe it's sleeping with the light off. And you're like, oh, but I can only sleep if the light is on. It's scary without the light off. Again, you've got to trust your parents when they promise that everything's going to be okay and that they'll be there for you in their bedroom if you need any help. Or maybe it's going to the dentist and you're like, oh, I don't like going to the dentist. They put tools in, they put things in my mouth and it feels weird. And again, you just have to trust your parents when they promise that everything will be okay and that they'll be there with you, and they'll remind you as well that you'll get a nice sticker at the end of it. Or maybe you're really excited about a school residential activity trip. You know there's going to be lots of amazing activities like climbing or canoeing, but actually you're a bit scared because you'll be away from your parents, and you just again have to trust this time your parents and your teachers that everything's going to be okay. And then what about this one is one of the biggest changes that anyone can go through. And this is really difficult. What about if your parents turned around and said to you, oh, we're going to move house now. So you're going to have to leave your family and friends because we're going to an exciting new city to live. Well, you might be like, oh, but I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to leave my granny who's just round the corner, or I don't want to leave my park, that's my favourite park. Well, again, you've got to trust your parents with this really difficult decision, that everything's going to be okay and that you'll make new friends, and that your toys will be safe in your box and things like that. And this final one is where we're going to meet our Bible character today, which is Abraham. So I hope you could see in all those different scenarios that although they might seem a little bit scary or something that we've not tried before, if we have faith and trust in our parents, then we know that they promise that everything will be okay and that they will be there with us to help us. And especially when we're moving house and leaving all our friends behind us, maybe to go to live in a new city, or even move to another country even potentially, because some families move to a whole new country and that would be really scary. But in those situations we just trust our parents and know that they promise we will make new friends and that they will help us. So the reason I shared that is because today we're going to read and learn about a character called Abram, who later had his name changed to Abraham. Now God asked him to do something really big, and that was to move house and move to a new nation. So he had to leave all of his friends and family behind and move to a new nation. But he trusted in God and he did that, and God promised him a big promise. So let's hear what that big promise was. So we're going to Genesis. So I've got my International Children's Bible here. So we're going to Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 to 3. And let me read you that. So it says, "Then the Lord said to Abram, 'Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's family. Go to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make you famous. And with you will be a blessing, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you. I will place a curse on those who harm you. And all the people on earth will be blessed through you.'" Wow, so that is scary, isn't it, to move to a new land? But did you see that God said, if you listen to me and trust in me, I promise to make you, did you hear that? That I promise that all people on earth will be blessed through you. And we know that God never ever breaks his promises. So, I wonder though, you might be thinking, well, how did God fulfill that promise to Abraham? Well, I've got that written down here. So, as it says here, let me make sure I've got it the right way up. How did God fulfill his promise to Abraham? So, and that promise is the one that I've just read, that said, "And all the people on earth will be blessed through you." Well, how did he do that? Well, he did it through one of his descendants, and one of his descendants was called Jesus. And as we know, Jesus came from God, and he came and died on a cross so that we could be everyone on earth could be forgiven, and everyone on earth could have a rescue plan and be restored to being a friend of God again. So therefore, all peoples are blessed through Jesus. So that is how God fulfilled his promise to Abraham all those years ago. So isn't that amazing? So if we put faith and trust in God, we know that his promises are always there for us. He promises to always love us, to always care for us, to always be there for us, to be our strength, to be our rescue. We just need to trust in him. Isn't that amazing? And we know that if we have faith in God, nothing is impossible, for all things are possible with God. And that leads beautifully onto a song that I love, and I know is one of Anne's favourites, which is called "Faith as Small as a Mustard Seed Can Move Mountains, Move Mountains." So do enjoy singing along with Anne, and if you can remember the actions, do the actions too. And see you again soon.
Well, faith as small as a mustard seed. I know that you were learning some of these actions with Michael a few weeks ago, but I can't do both. So I'm just going to play it, have a think about the actions and join in with the words. Faith as small as a mustard seed. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains, move mountains. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains by the power of God. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains, move mountains. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains by the power of God. Believe what Jesus said was true. Believe he meant it just for you. Wait and see what God will do as you pray. As you pray. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains, move mountains. Faith as small as a mustard seed will move mountains by the power of God.
So I hope you enjoyed singing along to "Faith as Small as a Mustard Seed" with Anne. And if you remember doing the actions, also doing those too. So I thought today's craft, because we've been learning all about promises, I thought we would have a go at doing a craft linked to promises. But I just want to share one more verse just before I explain our craft, and that is Genesis 15 verses 5, which is just another time where God explains this promise to Abraham about him being a blessing to all nations, but in a slightly different way. So here we go. It says, "Then God led Abraham outside. God said, 'Look at the sky. There are so many stars you cannot count them, and your descendants will be too many to count. So that was just another way of explaining that promise. And how did he do that? Well, remember, Jesus was one of his descendants, and Jesus, by his death and resurrection, allows all of us now to be children of God. So isn't that amazing? So that is another explanation of God's promise to Abraham. So I thought what we could do is do some promises to God and our parents, and we could do them in the form of stars. So here we go. What you'll need is card, which you can then draw something at the top, where a little banner where you can write "I promise to," and then you can draw and cut out lots of different stars. And then you'll also need some scissors, so you might need your parents to help you if they're a bit too sharp for you. You'll need some string, and you'll need some sellotape. And then what you can do is on the stars you can write some promises. So I promise to read my Bible is what that star says. This star says here, I promise to say grace before I eat. This one here says, I promise to trust in God. This one says to be polite. This one says kind. This one says be helpful. This one says caring. This one over here says listen to my parents, but you could have one that says listen to teachers as well, maybe. This one says pray, and this one says pray nicely. And I hope you can see as well that you can have your stars in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And again, the reason we're doing stars is because you remember in Genesis 15 verse 5, the one I've just told you, he said that his descendants, Abraham's descendants, will be as many as the stars. So I hope you enjoy doing that craft, and it will help you to remember some promises that you can do for God and for your parents and even for your teachers. But do remember that even if you break your promises, God forgives you. So you can go to God and he will forgive you, and then you can ask him to help you to keep your promises better in the future. So what I thought we'd do is end with teaspoon prayers like we always do. So I've got some teaspoon prayers written down that I'd love to pray. So let's close our eyes and pray. So thank you that you care for us, and even though it sometimes feels like you give us things to do that are really difficult, we know that we can trust in you to help us with them, and that you never break your promises to us. Sorry that we don't always have faith in you and sometimes ignore you and break our promises. Please forgive us. And finally, please help us to start to keep the promises that we have just written down on our craft, and help us to remember that you are there to forgive us and help us to keep our promises better in the future. Amen. So goodbye for now, and I hope you found this Sunday Club video really helpful, and see you again soon.